The Pit Press Podcast.
Get a chance to see Ehrlicher, the linebacker, who they say has the potential to be the best defensive player they've ever had in New Mexico.
Looking down the middle, throwing into coverage, and it's picked off by New Mexico. You can hear the no, but Christian Washington says yes, yes, yes! Christian Washington! I don't need to take a knee. I want 6. Touchdown, New Mexico! And Kendrick back through the air where he struggled. That time right on the money.
Welcome back to the Pit Press Podcast, another episode covering UNM athletics. Pretty much a somber time if you're a Lobo fan. Later in the episode, the Lobo fan since 1970 and the voice of the Western New Mexico Mustangs, Ed Nunez, and Eric Malton and I, we're going to break down or just give our thoughts on the game. Ed's here with me right now. Ed, how are you?
Somber. You know, you mentioned somber, and I was down at Silver City covering Western New Mexico, but following along with your guys' texts and my son who was at the game. So I got to tell you, even Western New Mexico football coach head coach Billy Hickman asked me about the Lobo Aggies after the game, after his Mustangs lost to Texas A&M Kingsville. And I told him, hey, man, I had that long face. So somber, that's the word today, Ryan.
So we're going to give our thoughts on the game and just everything we thought after we have this young gentleman on. Sean, it's Reider. I'm glad I asked after the fact that I hit record, right?
Yep.
Perfect, dude. I'm so sorry. He is one of my new favorite people in town because I admire him, and I think he's doing a damn good job. Our next guest is I wrote this down. I'm just going to read it. Our next guest is a reporter writer for the Albuquerque Journal. He covers the UNM football team for the state's biggest paper. His name is Sean Reider. Sean, how are you doing today?
Doing good today, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, man, we always appreciate it. Let's start. I'm not going to play it now, but we will talk about it later in the episode. It's not Joe Willie Namath status. It's not Plaxico Burress. It's not. I'm trying to think of other famous guarantees.
Pat Riley, 1988. Pat Riley.
Thank you, Ed. The first one that comes to mind is Joe Willie Namath, but I'm calling it the guaranteed herd around the Lanham and Chapman, and I'm wondering if this was basketball, Ed. That's something we'll ask about later. If this was basketball, holy hell. Were you surprised, Sean, with UNM head football coach Danny Gonzalez guaranteeing a bowl appearance in the post-game press conference after that 27-17 loss to New Mexico State on Saturday?
Well, first off, on the note of historical guarantees, I'm a little surprised you didn't pull out Jim Fassel. I think it was in 2000. He guaranteed the Giants would run the table and go, and then they ended up going to the Super Bowl, correct?
They did. Sure? Sean, you know who I thought of when Danny said that? I thought of Joe Namath and I thought of Jim Fassel. Because they went on to win the NFC convincingly they beat the Eagles that year. Then they smashed the Vikings. And then if you have not watched Bullies of Baltimore, you'll get that education there. You are correct, sir. This is why I like you, but continue.
Yeah, look, after the A&M game, Danny did say, I don't know if I wrote it anywhere, but he did say, I do think this team is good enough to be contending for a bowl come November. And I think, and he said, I think we can get right there. This loss to A&M is what he was talking about. Doesn't define us. And he kind of, mentioned that before throughout fall camp and the like. But look, anytime you guarantee that this team is that a program like UNM is going to be in a bowl game after not having been to a bowl game since 2016. It's absolutely going to raise some eyebrows. So I honestly was surprised that he did it. And I think everybody else in the press room for that interview was also surprised as well.
I think we like to stroke our own ego no matter what level of the press we're at, regardless if it's New York, LA, or Albuquerque or Santa Fe, New Mexico, because I think there were Rick Wright and Will Weber were in the room. I was there. Our producer, or excuse me, my business partner in this, Eric Malton, was there, and then and I just felt like all the younger guys, like you and Brad and But excuse me. Whoa. And I can tell that nothing like burping on a podcast, but I could tell that, I don't know, my radar went off like, I couldn't believe he said that. I'm sure for you, you were like, holy hell. With what has transpired and how I have felt, how this season has gone, this was the first look at what we really thought we would get out of this team, because I think you can just throw Texas A&M out the window. Not that they're not trying to win, and then Tennessee Tech out the window, but this is in this in this state, and I've got friends that are alumni, and then when you put alcohol in them, it's already bad, and then you put booze in them, it's even worse. But this is the second consecutive loss to NMSU. How hot do you think Danny's seat is?
I think it's like you said, and I wrote it yesterday. You were never going to get a great feel for what this team would actually be for the bulk of their schedule against A&M or against Tennessee Tech. Against A&M had the clear talent advantage, overwhelming talent advantage, and against Tennessee Tech, UNM had the clear talent advantage, and not so with New Mexico State. I also wrote that as well. It is just one game. And they are now just a quarter of the way through the season with really one game that you can probably bank off of, and to see what the team could actually do. I don't know if, the guarantee or losing to New Mexico and losing to New Mexico State and the like, really makes his seat all that much. Actually, no, let me phrase that. I don't know if, the guarantee changes what UNM has done or will do to either make or miss a bowl game. I do think the guarantee does probably make Danny's seat a little bit hotter from the outside looking in, but I also don't think that he's going to be on a quick trigger or whatever. If they drop it to UMass, that he'll be out the door after that. I think he's going to get the rest of the year to play it out, and I think we'll have a pretty good idea by the end of the year whether or not it's the end of the Danny Gonzalez era or the possible extension for the Danny Gonzalez era, for lack of a better term.
You mentioned, Sean, you're young, man. You're going to mention guarantees that you remember, and you remember Jim Fossil's guarantee. I remember, I'm much older. I remember Joe Namath's guarantee, which, was unbelievable because of the Jets. And really that probably got Namath, who has pedestrian numbers, into the Hall of Fame. His numbers aren't great, but that guarantee and then the merger of the AFL and NFL probably vaulted him into the Hall of Fame. Pat Riley's guarantee.
We probably don't have the Super Bowl.
Right. No, you're right. You're very, very good point. Pat Riley's guarantee. I remember that because I'm a big Laker fan, and I remember him saying, "We're gonna do it again." Now, what kind of pressure? These players have not been together that long. A lot of them are from another schools, a lot of transfers. What kind of pressure does that guarantee? Because every question is going to be, about this guarantee, about the bowl appearance. What kind of pressure does that guarantee put on the players?
I think it's going to be different for certain guys depending on what positions they play and depending on their level of experience, to be honest with you. After Danny talked, Dylan Hopkins got up and he was asked the same question about, hey, your coach guaranteed this. How do you feel about that? And Dylan was very quick. He said 100%, we are going to be in a bowl. Tavian Combs a little bit. He didn't issue a statement with such clarity as Dylan, but he did end up, saying like, well, we're looking forward to the challenge of doing that. And I think we can possibly do that as well. I think it doesn't put that much pressure on the team as a whole, to be honest with you. In talking with a lot of guys during fall camp, they did say like, look, like, we're out here for a bowl. We are trying to win games. And I think that's the expectation that they've kind of had in their minds. I think it puts pressure on some groups in particular, though. I remember after A&M talking to Jamarius Lewis, one of the Wolf safeties, and he flat out admitted, look, we came off a really bad night. 6 receiving touchdowns, I think 277 total passing yards, which isn't a gaudy figure, but they just got beat in the secondary in that unit. And he said, look, going into Tennessee Tech, we do feel we have some pressure on us to get things right. And going forward, we are going to feel that a little bit for the rest of the schedule. I think now there's some pressure on the secondary to kind of grow up fast, as we've seen. I don't think the offensive line played terrible. And honestly, I haven't finished rewatching the entire tape. I think there's a little bit of pressure on the offensive line in some ways too, although they were honestly very good from what I've rewatched in terms of pass blocking. And I think there's some pressure too on some of the skill positions as well. I mean, I asked Danny in particular on Saturday night, you know, is there a feeling that you need to get a wide receiver like DJ Washington, 6'5", 220 pounds, I believe, very talented. Is there a feeling that you need to get him the ball more and you need to get other guys the ball more? And he kind of said, I mean, that is his third Division I football game. All these guys are kind of growing up behind, in front of our eyes. And I think there is some pressure there in some ways to expedite that process as much as possible. But as we know, I mean, it's not really a process you can move along as quickly as you might imagine.
Now, I've got a comment and another question for you. I hear what you're saying, but I think sometimes when those kind of things are said, there is pressure. And then if a loss builds up and then the pressure around Coach Gonzalez, it gets more and more with each loss. If they, continue to lose, hopefully they turn it around. But that's just something that I've seen happen over and over. We haven't heard guarantees like that from a UNM football coach ever, I don't think. And again, I'm rooting for him. I think he's a fantastic guy. But those kind of things, I think, put a lot of pressure from outside the locker room in if the losses pile up. What do you think of the mental status of the locker room and leaders on the team right now?
I mean, I'd imagine they're exactly what Danny said after the game. I think they're crushed. I think there's some guys in here that are going to be here for only 1 year. You think of Hopkins in particular, and probably really wanted to crack at New Mexico State and wanted to go out on top in that way in what could be their final rivalry game, and just didn't come to fruition. There's some younger guys from New Mexico who have felt this rivalry more than other transfers, and I think it hit them hard in particular. But I think, on Saturday against UMass, they're going to get, we're all going to see the level of response that they can put together. And I think that's going to be fascinating.
Diego Pavia, he's a kid from, as Ryan mentioned on our last podcast, a kid from St. Pius, Volcano Vista.
He's one of my own. I love him.
Yes. Accounted for 300 yards of total offense, 200 passing and 100 rushing, and he did wonders with his legs and ran when he needed to. Where did you see the biggest breakdowns on defense, and what will you think they'll focus on moving forward?
It was funny to talk to Diego after the game in that sense because if you'd watched the first 3 weeks, and I think about the UMass game the most in particular because I was at that game and I covered it, but it looked at points like Diego was just trying too hard to fit into a system. Trying to be just somebody that he really isn't. He was putting up okay rushing numbers, but he wasn't, he certainly wasn't the rusher that he was last year where he was really keeping defenses on his toes. And obviously he had been hamstrung in terms of turnovers or passing. I think he came into the UNM NMSU game with, 4 interceptions, and it was two per game against FBS opponents. But talking to Diego after the game, we asked him about how he kind of picked them apart man coverage and he kind of made things happen with his legs. And he said, Tim Beck, who was the de facto interim when Jerry Kill was out, and is also the offensive coordinator for NMSU. Diego said Tim Beck basically told him, look, just take that pressure off yourself. Just get back to what you've been able to do in the past and been able to do with a lot of success. And that really showed. Diego said that, look, his reads are it's 1, 2, 3, and then it's me. And if they want to drop guys back, then he's going to take those yards and run for it. And it's not going to be just running around the perimeter. He will run right up the middle, as we saw many times on Saturday night, to extend things or just flat out get yards. And, and if they want to pressure it, he said, we'll take advantage of man coverage because they felt that they had the edge of man coverage with some of their wide receivers, and it wasn't to the level of what A&M did against UNM. But it led to 2 huge receiving touchdowns on the part of Jonathan Brady. That last one, the 75-yarder, which was kind of the backbreaker when it was all said and done.
I read your Rick Wright wrote an excellent article, as you did, summarizing the game. Rick Wright, a longtime veteran writer here at the Albuquerque Journal. You mentioned the subtraction of A.J. Halsey and Jarek Reed, who's in the pros. New Mexico once again gave up explosive plays in the passing game, and you mentioned it's more of a safety problem than it was a cornerback problem. Is the secondary still a concern?
Yeah, I mean, and it's, you go back, and I wasn't here when Jarek Reed was playing, but you go back and you watch Jarek Reed, and honestly, I mean, it's just outstanding to see. I mean, literally, I mean, like one of the smartest players in the field, no matter the situation, almost always made the right play, almost always came up with something. AJ Halsey for UNM to hit on that guy with the level of experience that he had coming in, which wasn't a ton, if any, at the collegiate level. I mean, definitely worked wonders there. But I mean, now it is the question. I mean, the clock is kind of ticking on secondary in some ways to figure things out and do it as more or less as fast as possible in some ways. But, I've talked to Dante Martin and Tavian Combs about this before too. It's just going to be a matter of just getting as many good reps as they can in practice. And, I mean, just making sure that they're executing on the back end in games. And, for a UNM team that is kind of, really not, struggling to a degree with that. It's playing a key role in their losses. I think that's going to be interesting to see going forward.
I read, of course, about some other things that you talked about. The passing game. New Mexico did win the total yardage battle, battle 401 to 397, I believe. There weren't any big explosive plays in the passing game. They did take some shots. Jeremiah Hickson, I believe, was their leading receiver with 46 yards. What do you attribute that to, the lack of explosive plays on Saturday? They did take some shots, a couple of passes dropped, but what do you attribute that to?
Thin margins. I think that very first play of the game, if I remember correctly, that was a pass to Caleb Medford. That was basically off Medford's fingertips in that sense. But I don't know if I'm as worried about or I don't know if fans should be worried about the lack of kind of explosive passing plays. I think they have the pieces to get that going, and I think everybody's kind of saw that against Tennessee Tech and what they were able to do there, granted against an inferior opponent. But I thought New Mexico State's defense did a really good job of covering guys in the back end and putting Hopkins in interesting positions as well in terms of making it harder for him to make decisions, even though he had more time in the pocket. They dropped some guys who did some interesting things defensively. Didn't really bring out as exotic of blitz packages on like third downs, late downs that we had been accustomed to NMSU kind of seeing.
Do you think, what is your take? I think that the last 2 years, Jerry Kill has outcoached Danny Gonzalez. What are your thoughts on that? I know you weren't here last year, but as far as the game goes this year, do you feel he got outcoached?
I would say maybe this year, but this is also a weird situation. I mean, it really was, I mean, the win's going to go on Jerry Kill's record. But I don't know how much Jerry Kill was actually coaching on the sideline. I think he was coaching to a degree, but just with everything going on where he missed practice, he did speak to the team before the game, but he wasn't available to the media after. Tim Beck still took those reps. I don't know if we can pin this as a whole on, whether Jerry Kill was on a headset kind of out coaching Danny in that sense, or even in the prep that week, because it looks like Tim Beck did a lot of good things with NMSU in terms of getting that offense right for this kind of game, and the defense also showed up pretty well, honestly. But I think last year too was kind of tough as well, because I think obviously NMSU took the win, but that was against a UNM offense that couldn't do really much of anything, and it wasn't so much NMSU's defense was all that great. It was they could not find the end zone. They had to settle for 3 field goals. I think that was 21-9 was the final score there. Yeah. So I think that's a tough question. And I wish I could give you a better answer.
That's all right.
But I think NMSU has been built in Kill's vision, in his likeness to a degree, and that's working wonders for them. But other than that, I don't know if I could give a better answer than that.
I'm not going to ask you this question because you weren't here. What is the team's mentality heading into this week's game against UMass? And I don't know, there's probably some people here. You're not going around the world, but you're 5.5 hours, 6 hours away from Amherst. I don't even know where you fly into. I don't know if you'd fly into Boston, but what is the mentality heading into this week's game against UMass?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna get a good read tomorrow when we talk to everybody. But I think this is gonna be viewed as the get right game in a lot of different ways. I mean, UMass is better than they've been in the past. UMass is not exactly a world beater by any stretch of the imagination. I think it was turnover. I haven't watched the Eastern Michigan tape yet, but I think it was turnovers that really did them in against them, and they still made that a close game. But I think Danny's kind of talked about this to a degree. He does feel that this is a pretty mature group, and that if things were to get hairy, they would be there for the long run, and there wouldn't be a whole lot of guys essentially giving up or kind of locking down in that sense. And I think that's going to be what a lot of guys communicate tomorrow, and I think that is kind of the mindset. So, but I'm curious to see when we talk to them.
The only thing that resonates with me with UMass is 96 with John Calipari, Marcus Camby, and they played the Final Four in the Meadowlands. That's my knowledge about UMass. But and I'm gonna butcher it here. The quarterback's name, Tayson Pom. I didn't even bother to look it up. I know that they've gone with Carlos Davis. Does it even? Holy moly! It's hailing in my house. Does it even matter who you think is at quarterback for the Minutemen on Saturday?
I think it absolutely does. And his nickname has been from what I know, he has been nicknamed Puma. So Puma's the easy reference there. But what I saw Don Brown today in his weekly press conference, he said that he indicated that Puma would not be available for this game, so will be another Carlos Davis game. Davis is way more of a passing threat, and that might be, while we just talked a ton about how UNM needs to get the secondary right in a lot of different ways. That might be maybe a little bit of a better thing. Puma, that kid against NMSU, he made the big plays for them, particularly with his legs. Particularly, I think it was that 4th and 7 conversion in Aggie Memorial Stadium, I think early in the fourth quarter, and that that killed NMSU in the long run. But I think Davis is Western Carolina transfer, so he's got experience, but it is still Division I football. He's still adjusting in that sense, and adjusting to that level in a sense. So I think it matters to a degree. I think it absolutely matters.
Palmacan. There we go, Palmacan, and it's like downpouring at my house right now. He is a beat writer for the Albuquerque Journal. He covers UNM football. His name is Mr. Sean Reider. Sean, as always, we thank you very much.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Sean.
All right, welcome back to the second half of this post-NMSU Pit Press podcast. Just had Sean Reider on. Obviously, I'm Ryan Tamori. Ed Nunez, Lobo Fans at 70, voice of the Western New Mexico Mustangs. My business partner, Eric Moulton, is joining us, and somebody that just crashed the party, which we're very happy about. And, man, I usually prep for these things, and I'm going to butcher your intro. He played for New Mexico. Oh, man. See, I butchered it.
2006 to 2008.
There we go. Perfect. Part of that 2007 team that won the New Mexico Bowl and shut out Colin Kaepernick in Nevada, right?
Yes,
He was a 4th-round pick in the 2009 NFL draft by the Houston Texans. He played for the Texans from 2009 to 2012. Played for the Detroit Lions in 2013, from 2013 to 2018. This I knew that I didn't have to look up. Second team All-Pro in 2014, a Pro Bowler in 2014. He led the NFL in interceptions that year. Total tackles in the NFL, 737. He had 4 sacks, 24 total interceptions. Defensive touchdowns, 2, forced fumbles, 10. Quite an honor to talk to this guy, and he's a Lobo legend. Glover Quin, how are you, sir?
Man, I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We're doing well. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to start with the guy who played in the NFL. You were at the Aggie Lobo game, and I had to stop you there for a second because you were giving good answers. You were talking about not even giving your kids scholarships, that you wouldn't even want your kids to take a scholarship to NMSU. But what was your reaction to the Lobo Aggie game on Saturday?
I'm from Mississippi, so coming out to Albuquerque, I didn't really know anything about the New Mexico State. So I just was born, well, not born, but just brought into the rivalry and took it to heart. My 3 years there, 06, 07, 08, we played twice down in Aggie Land and won both times. We played them one time in Albuquerque. And when I tell you the building was electric, I mean, it was standing room only. I mean, I don't even know if it was standing room only. Like the hills that got the grass on it was covered with people. I mean, it probably was 45, 50,000 people there. Just a awesome time to be a part of it. So like that was my memories of the game. So when I came back, I was like looking for that same like thing, and it wasn't that. But the Lobos have lost to the Aggies the last couple years, and like they've been losing to them recently in the recent years. And I'm just like, guys, if you don't win any game, beat the Aggies. Like I mean, my nephew was playing for Texas A&M baseball last year, and they're the Aggies, and I literally couldn't buy any gear that had Aggies on it. I had to have it. It had to have like Texas A&M or 12th man, but I couldn't buy anything that had the Aggies on it. That's just how much I don't like the Aggies. Like I told you guys, I was telling my kids, like I would rather pay for you guys to go to school somewhere than for y'all to accept a scholarship to New Mexico State. You know what I mean? Hopefully, I don't have to eat those words, but that's just kind of how I feel about the New Mexico State Aggies. So that was a tough loss to watch this weekend for sure.
Ed, I'm going to defer to you because you were asking him a question and I interrupted him and told him to wait until he hit record.
Glover, you played at a time. You mentioned that. I was at that game when you said people were on the hills. I was at that game, and I remember having to park way in the heck out there. And I was telling Eric and Ryan, a female fan from New Mexico State and a male fan from New Mexico were screaming at each other. No fights or anything, but they were just insulting each other. That's the rivalry. As Ryan said, I've been a Lobo fan since '70, and I grew up hating the Aggies too. Hate them. That's just the way it is. It's a rivalry. I know some people down in Las Cruces that are friends. But when it comes to New Mexico State, that's hated enemy right away. And so you mentioned that the Lobos have lost the last two times. But this is what I'm going to ask you. To me, it seems like a little bit of a cultural change. Jared Kill has done a great job down there. He really has. He put his Aggies in position to win. They called some good plays and took advantage of Diego Pavia's athletic ability. Pavia played well in scrambling from the pocket, and the Lobos did not respond. So I think what I'm going to say is this, is when Rocky Long was here, the culture was great. You mentioned people on the hills. We haven't seen that since. And I just think Paul Krebs was very short-sighted, former athletic director Paul Krebs, in firing Rocky Long, bringing in Mike Locksley. Well, getting rid of him. He didn't fire him. He kind of ran him off, though. He did run him off. And then bringing in Mike Locksley, saying that the offense was going to add another digit to the scoreboard. We saw how that worked out. It hasn't been the same since, not even close. Bob Davie did take the Lobos to 2 bowls, and nobody even talks about those couple of those teams that were pretty darn good. What's it going to take for New Mexico to change that culture and get right now where New Mexico State is? They've got the jump on us. We have to be honest about it. As mad as it makes us, right now it's the truth.
Yeah, they do. And, I think it's sad, but, with the way the college football is going right now, you hate to say this, but it takes money. I mean, that's really because to get the players, now with the NILs and the transfer portal and all these things, a school like New Mexico, you look at what happened to them last year, right? A couple of key defensive players that were key guys had good years, and then they transferred to different schools, right? I mean, you lose A.J. Halsey, freshman All-American, goes to a bigger school in University of Houston, right? You lose, I think the linebacker, he left Moon, and he goes to San Diego State, right? So in this new age of college football, is a school like New Mexico, it's hard for them to keep the good players. And the schools like New Mexico State, it's hard to keep them as well. And so it's just going to have to really be really hard recruiting, find some NIL money to offer some of these kids. And you got to get back to, your bread and butter. When I was there, Rocky Long was we were a tough, hard-nosed, physical guy. We didn't try to, run a spread offense. We had big running back Rodney Ferguson. We had Paul Baker, and we was coming downhill running the ball. We had 2 wide receivers, Marcus and Travis, had a slot receiver, different guys, Roland Bruno, just different guys that we would put in there. And, we just play tough, hard-nosed offense and then tough, hard-nosed defense. I think the defensive scheme, they say it's the same, but it looks like it's changed a little bit. And so I think, you're just going to have to get some players in there that, can get done what you want to get done, but you got to find a way to keep those players so that you can develop those players and build a team. Otherwise, you got guys leaving every year. You're having to start from scratch every year, year in and year out. And it's hard, I think, for New Mexico to continue to get, top end guys year in and year out. You got to be able to build guys. And when you finally get a good one, you want them to be able to stay for the whole time, i.e. like a Jarek Reed, somebody like myself, or, guys like that, to where you can build a program. And it's difficult nowadays with the new college landscape.
Jarek Reed, this probably pains you. He's playing in the NFL right now. He seemed to have a good game against what I saw against, with the Seahawks, with the Lions. But what, for the fact that he came from New Mexico, obviously they miss him, but can you kind of elaborate on how much maybe the secondary and the defense and Danny miss Jarek Reed on that team?
Well, I mean, if you're good enough to play in the NFL, you're a talented player, right? So he was talented. I mean, he probably was a good communicator, probably was a good leader, probably was a lot of different things for that defense. And so anytime you lose a player like that, I mean, you don't just replace NFL talented, NFL caliber guys like that on a roster like New Mexico. You got to build those guys, right? And so I'm sure they're missing him tremendously. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, you look at a lot of the games, the first two games, well, not the first two games, but the two losses, big plays given up in the secondary has been, an Achilles heel for that team, so they definitely missing him. His leadership, I'm sure, his practice habits, his study habits, just his presence in the locker room and in the weight room. You just can't, like I said, you can't replace that, immediately. You got to build. Somebody else got to come through and rebuild that all over again. And so hopefully they got somebody in the locker room that could be that, because they definitely need somebody in the secondary to just step up and be a leader.
I think going into the end of the game, that post-game press conference, they alluded to Tavion Combs kind of being that vocal leader, and he kind of took a lot of the accountability and kind of stepped up and said, hey, I do need to be that vocal leader. I'm the oldest, probably most experienced defensive player in the secondary. We have some young wolves out there that kind of need to step up and that need to kind of be shown the way. I don't know if you have any relationship with Tavion Combs or seen much tape on him, but he's still kind of recovering from an injury. So we don't know if he's 100% yet. Outside of Tavion Combs, who have you recognized on the defense as kind of being maybe another guy or another few guys that need to step up?
Well, I mean, I think all of them need to step up, I mean, I think you look at going back to the first game, I was at the Texas A&M game, and I don't know all these guys' names. I kind of know the numbers. So the one safety, number 9, I can't remember his name, but he had a tough night against A&M with penalties and giving up big plays. My nephew plays for the Lobos, number 5, Jamarius Lewis. He's a young DB, but he's giving up big plays over the top as well. And when you look at the safety position for them, the Lobo, number 22, I mean, I don't know if I've seen him make a play all season. And when I say a play, I'm not talking about a tackle. I'm talking about an interception, a fumble, force a fumble, or get a sack. Like, when in that defense, when you're the Lobo, you are, I mean, Brian Urlacher played that position, right? Like, you have to be the guy. And when you're not the guy, it's hard for everybody else. And like, when I look at them defensively and a lot of the big plays that they're giving up, and it's like, man, I'd be wondering, like, do you guys have a middle field safety? It looks like there's not even a middle field safety and everybody's playing zero coverage. Like, how are we giving up so many plays over the top if we got a middle field safety? But it looks like we don't have a middle field safety. Like, who's supposed to be in the middle? Is it the Lobo? Because he's running up trying to make a tackle every time. Right? So it's very difficult to play what they're playing, how they're playing it, because I mean, when you got safeties covering these slot wide receivers, these guys are wide receivers. They're not tight ends. Right? And you don't have cornerbacks covering these guys. You got safeties covering these guys. So you got safeties playing your slot receivers with no help over the top. Like, that's difficult to do for a whole entire game. Like, that's very difficult, especially if you're not getting sacks and defensive pressure, all the time. Now, if you're blitzing everybody and the ball got to come out quickly, then maybe you can get away with that. But if you're not doing those things or you're not getting pressure and those guys are playing zero coverage, seem like, that's hard. And like I say, they're not even corners; they're safeties.
The young guy, the young man that had problems at Texas A&M was Noah Pola-Gates. He was a transfer from Nebraska, and I kind of thought, man, he knows what it's like to be in a stadium like that. I think he knows the atmosphere, and I was just kind of shocked at that. I think Danny had mentioned he was nervous. Here's a play that's gonna make everyone's blood boil in this. Hold on. This is the play that kind of sealed the deal. This is Diego Pavia to Jonathan Brady for 75 yards right after the Lobos made it to cut it 20-17.
He's going to throw over the middle and has a man. That's Brady. Brady is running away from everyone. Jonathan Brady is going to go for a 75-yard New Mexico State touchdown.
Oh, man, that's gonna pay me. I forgot who that's Jeff Simiet on the Mountain West Network. Man, I forgot who his color commentator was.
George Carter, I believe.
George Carter, yeah, that's what I thought. George Carter, and he's just like that. Ed, you were gonna say something.
Glover, one of the things you said, okay, you're recognizing coverage. You played with the Lobos. You understand that defense. You played at the pro level. If you're seeing that there's a play not being made by the Lobo, you can only imagine what offensive coordinators are seeing. And Coach Jerry Kill, his offensive coordinator, I think it's Tim Beck, the assistant, I'm not sure who it is, but they saw that too, because they put their players in good position to attack what they felt was a weakness. Now, the other thing, you mentioned the players, AJ Halsey not there, Reed and the pros, Deion Hunter, the middle linebacker, he's also missing. But the guy that Ned James calls the Pac-12 killer, Rocky Long, the guy that calls the defenses. You mentioned your team back in 2003 to 2008, physically tough, dogs on both sides of the ball, right? Taking on the personality of your head coach, who still lifted weights with you guys at that time. That you guys knew that was the guy. I'm not saying anything bad about Danny. Everyone's different. I'm not saying Coach Gonzalez needs to go in there and lift weights. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that was that personality of the coach then. So I think things have changed. But how much of a difference is not having Coach Long now? Coach Reffert's a good defensive coach. Coach Gonzalez supposedly knows the 3-3-5, pretty well. But Coach Long knows that defense better than anyone. How much of a difference is his absence? Have you seen? You just mentioned some things as far as the Lobo and where they're supposed to be playing. How much is his absence felt?
I mean, looking at, the performance in the two, and I'm not counting the Tennessee Tech game. I feel like they were very overmatched, right? I'm just talking Texas A&M and New Mexico State. You have to say that his presence was missed. His experience, his play calling, his his tone setting, his attitude, because Coach Long was he's a no nonsense type of guy, hard nosed. So I'm sure you miss that every day at practice. The tone that he sets, the way he demands from his defense, what he demands from his team, his guys, the accountability. So I'm sure you miss all those things, and with Coach G, I think he's, the one calling the defensive plays or trying to help or run the defense, him and Coach Reffitt. But it's difficult when you're the head coach. You got a lot of things going on, and so I just feel like Coach Long's presence definitely is missed. But I mean, Coach G knows the defense. I think at the end of the day, guys got to make plays, but also, I think there could be some adjustments to, I don't know if it's a mixing in some cover 2 every now and then. Like I don't ever see them play like a cover 2 or a cover 4 or and I could be wrong. I haven't seen the actual game film. I'm just going off of kind of what it looks like. And it looks like it's always some form of like man coverage where, hey man, you got a guy, you got to win. I don't see a lot of complex things in the secondary where it's, combination calls is, quarters on one side, halves on the other side, fire zones, or just a lot of different things that can give quarterbacks problems to allow the pressure to get there. It looks like it's a lot of, straight lining up over your guy, and that's who you got. And I could be wrong, so don't quote me on that and say that that's what they're doing, because I haven't saw their actual game film and went over the plays and the coverages. I'm just going based off what it looks like from when I'm watching the game.
Let's kind of stay on that topic, because I was in the south end zone, pretty much where you were standing, but everyone saw that game. Diego Pavia pretty much had his way. I think he had 100 yards rushing on his own, 200 yards passing. Coach G mentioned making some adjustments at halftime, adding more people into the box to prevent him from escaping and getting those big gains. But he still seemed to kind of escape the pocket or make those big plays over the top, like you had mentioned. Can you talk about, what would you have done there if you were the coach, maybe, or how many people in the box and keeping kind of Diego Pavia contained?
Well, that's the thing, when you have a running game, that's what hurts DBs, right? Because there's 11 guys on the field. So if we can stop the run with a 7-man box, right? That means we got 4 DBs left for coverage, right? If we can't stop the run with a 7-man box, then now we got to bring an 8th man. So now we only have 3 DBs left, right? That's when you get into a lot of your cover 3s and your cover 1s and things like that. So you can go an 8-man box. The problem with that is it puts more pressure on the secondary, right? So then when you can't stop the run with an 8-man box, the only other thing you can do is try to go to some form of all-out pressure where you're sending 9 guys, right? It's very difficult. So you got to be able to stop the quarterback from scrambling around with the D lineman, like the D lineman and maybe 1 or 2 linebackers. You can't say we're going to have 8 guys in the box, 9 guys, however many you putting in there, just to stop the quarterback from scrambling, right? Like, that's tough. And then the running back, he's getting a couple yards here and there, but like I said, it seemed like the quarterback was just, they couldn't get him down. And then all of a sudden, when you got one-on-one coverage, he scrambles around and make one guy miss, and now he hits a wide receiver because they're just running because they got plenty of time. And so, like, you have to, like I say, mix it up a little bit. I think when you run like underneath zones, like a cover 2, now when the quarterback takes off running, there's eyes, there's people looking at him. When you're playing a lot of man-to-man and you blitzing, say you blitz to the left, he takes off running to the right, and then all the secondary is in man-to-man coverage. There's nobody to tackle him. He makes one D lineman miss, and then there's nobody there. You try to go outside, then he breaks up the middle, but all the DBs are running because they're covering people. So having a spy, somebody that can tackle him in space, running different pressures, mixing in some zone pressures, just different things like that. But if they know what you're doing 95% of the time, it's going to be very difficult to stop them.
How much, you're a defensive guy. How much of a momentum swing, and I'm going to play this, was the fumble recovered by NMSU early? It could have been a 10-0 UNM lead at best case scenario. Here's the fumble, and here's Jeff Simeon on the call on the Mountain West Network.
The Lobos are at the 19. Sherrod White gets the handoff off the right side, breaks a tackle, breaks 3 more, breaks 4 more, ball's out, and it is loose and is recovered by New Mexico State. So fighting for extra yards, the ball came out, and Dylan Early jumped on it for the Aggies. First turnover of the game, and it goes to New Mexico State.
It has to be, everybody, it doesn't matter who I talk to, anybody in the press box, my buddies that are UNM alumni, other Lobo fans, they felt like that kind of sucked the air out of the stadium. What was your take on that? And that kind of, I think, swung the game.
Well, I think, that's definitely a big play, right? Huge play, momentum. But at the end of the day, when you really look at it, when you want to be a good team, stuff like that early in the game can't derail your whole game. Like, you're in the red zone and you happen to fumble. Okay, defense, go out there and stop them, and they punt it. We're still going to get good field position. We just got to come back. We can't let something like that happen in the first quarter and it just take all of our soul. Like, that's not the sign of like a good team, right? Like, a good team is when offensively they don't get the job done, so defensively we got to keep us in the game, right? A good team is a team where you can win 3 different ways, right? Like, if we got to go beat a team 42-45 because our defense is struggling today, then offense, we got to put up 45 points. If we got to beat a team 10-7 because our offense is struggling today, defense, you got to darn near pitch a shutout. And if we got to have a punt return or a kick return for a touchdown or block a punt because it's just going back and forth offensively and defense, we're both kind of struggling, but they are too, and we need a punt return or a block punt or something to give us the edge, then we got to have that. You got to be able to win games multiple ways. And so the offense come out, they get 3 points on the first drive, should have got a touchdown. And then you come back and the opportunity to go up and get another touchdown and you fumble the ball. Defense got to take the field with a mentality like, hey, guys, they just fumbled. That's fine. We're going to get the ball right back. Don't hang your head, offense, because if the offense feel like they got to score every single time because the defense can't stop anybody, that's not a good team. That's not a good camaraderie, good chemistry on the team. That's too much pressure on the offense to feel like we have to score every time because the defense can't stop anybody. And it's the same way as the defense feel like, bro, we got to pitch a shutout because the offense can't score 10 points. That's not good. You look at most of the good teams, offensively, they can score points. Defensively, they can stop people. You got to have that. So I don't feel like a play like that in the first quarter, although it was a big play. I don't feel like a play like that, especially when you're still winning the game, should take all your momentum and your soul and just let them drive all the way down the field and do whatever they want to do. Like, I just feel like that's not the signs of a mature, team. That's a young-minded team, in my opinion.
It's a team with a lot of transfers, a lot of guys that just started playing together. The teams that the Lobos had when you played had that cohesiveness, had that toughness. You mentioned Rodney Ferguson, a lumbering back, right? Lumbering. But, man, he got those tough yards when you needed them. You knew if it was 3rd and 2, he's going to get those 2 yards. You knew that. You knew that if the offense wasn't fancy, you mentioned the players that they had, and they got their yards, but the defense did their job. Special teams had good field goal kickers and good punters. You mentioned winning 3 ways. I don't know that this team has only been together for a short period of time. Do they have that mental toughness that you mentioned? They didn't Saturday night. That's obvious. You mentioned that, and you're not wrong. Can they develop it going forward? And, what was your impressions? There's a couple of questions of quarterback Dylan Hopkins. I think he's a good one. But what was your impressions of him? Can the Lobos develop that mental toughness going forward?
Yeah, I think they can develop it. A lot of times the toughness is built through experience, through different games, and like you said, they're a lot of transfers and guys first time playing with each other and things like that. And like I said, I think that's what's really hard because with the new college rules, it's just very difficult. It's very, very difficult to keep a core group of guys together at a smaller school like a New Mexico. Because, like you said, the kid, and I don't even know all the transfer rules, but you say the guy, the safety transferred from Nebraska, right? So obviously he was a Nebraska talent type guy for him to be at Nebraska, but he wasn't playing at Nebraska, right? So he leaves and he goes to New Mexico. I guarantee you, and I could be wrong, but his plan probably was to come to New Mexico and have a big year and try to transfer back to like some other big time school so that he can get more money. Like, I guarantee you, he didn't come to New Mexico planning to finish his college career at the University of New Mexico. So it's very difficult to build that. It is. I mean, when I was there, I started my sophomore year with DeAndre Wright, and we started all the way to my senior year. Our safeties, Blake Lagon, Tyson Didmore, he graduated a year before I did, but we had those guys the whole time. Zach Arnett, head coach at Mississippi State, he was there the whole time, right? A lot of the D linemen, like, we were there the whole time. Nobody was transferring, and everybody that was coming in was either a JUCO guy or a high school guy. We brought in Frankie Solomon. He was a high school guy that was there with us. Like, but nowadays it's not like that. It's not like that. And a lot of kids, you know, they look at New Mexico as, and I don't want to say it in a bad way, but they look at these smaller schools as a glorified junior college. They get to go to the school, play Division I football, but it's not Power 5 football. So, and if they ball out, now they get an opportunity to maybe hop in the transfer portal and go to a bigger school. So it's hard to keep those guys, and it's hard to develop that chemistry because guys are really just there looking out for themselves. They're not really there trying to buy into the culture of New Mexico and really the heart of the team. Like, they're really looking out for themselves, trying to figure out a way to ball out and go try to get some more money. That's what I feel. And I could be completely wrong, but that's what it looks like to me.
The big thing, and I'm asking you this because you're a professional athlete, the big thing that happened post game with members of the media, Eric and I were there, is the essentially, I jokingly called it the guarantee heard around the land of enchantment. Here's Danny Gonzalez post game.
Tomorrow, I'm gonna make a bold statement right now. I guarantee this team will be in a bowl game this year. Okay, we will find 5 wins from here to the end of the Utah State game.
We want to say on record. I mean, I covered. You and I have just met, but I go back to covering Mike Loxley years, and again, not a football player. I'm not a Division I football player, let alone like playing tackle football with my friends anymore. But the Loxley years were just not only a disaster on the field; they were a disaster off the field. Danny is very well liked. He's from, he's from here. But when you hear an athlete or even a coach make that statement, and after the game, Danny spoke first, and then they brought in Dylan Hopkins and Tavian Combs, and one of the reporters had asked Dylan, like, do you believe this? And he was kind of like, yeah, we're going to do it. It's going to be 100%. I'm sure he was upset that they lost a game. It just felt like there wasn't enough enthusiasm. But when you hear that, you've been around, whether you've been bulletin board material probably, or you've gotten bulletin board material. But when you, not that really is, but when you hear that with a team that's 1-2 and that has struggled, and it's kind of, I think it's irked UNM alumni and Lobo fan to where they ask that question, like, when's basketball season? What do you make of a statement like that?
Well, I mean, I think as a head coach, you probably got to make a statement like that and, try to, deflect from the game that just happened, losing to New Mexico State, and showing that you still believe in the team. And, You know, I mean, when you look at the Texas A&M game, you know, there are some bright spots, but it's like, I mean, the Mountain West is not a shabby conference now. It's some pretty good teams in there. Like, you're not going to just show up and win. And so when you see the things that are hurting them offensively and defensively, you know, and I'm not here to call anybody out, like, because I don't know all the guys intricately, but you know, I see the big receiver that they signed, JUCO transfer, number 0, I think.
Washington.
And what's his name?
DJ Washington.
DJ Washington,
I
number
think so.
0, the
Yeah.
tall guy.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, and I don't know him. You know, I just know he's a Lobo, and so hey, I'm trying to get him going. But I don't know if I've seen him make a play. You know, they threw a couple fades to him against Texas A&M, against smaller DBs. Like, he didn't come down with the ball. You know, this past game against A&M, they threw a couple deep balls to him. He didn't come down with the ball. You know, and so for me, it's like, if you're going to be the big time receiver, you got to make plays, guys. The quarterback is giving you opportunities. You got to make plays. You know, and he seems like the only guy that could be a big time threat, but don't seem like a fast guy. So it's always a jump ball type of situation. Everybody else seem like possession guys, right? Like number 8, he's quick and shifty, but like, I mean, he's catching the ball 8-yard out routes and 7-yard slant routes. And, you know, Song could be the same way, although he did get deep, you know, this past game. But I mean, it's hard to consistently go 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 play drives. Like, you need those guys that could get you, you know, 3 plays, and then all of a sudden you throw a bomb over the top and you run past somebody and you connect on it. We had a couple shots, I thought, and we didn't connect on them, whether it was an overthrow or this and this and that. And I like the quarterback. He seemed like a good guy, works hard. But like you were saying earlier, being nice guys and hard workers and all that stuff in football doesn't get you wins. Like, you got to go out and get the wins. Like, you got to go out and beat people. Nobody cares that you're a nice guy on the field. That's why they say, hey, man, he's a really nice guy off the field, but on the field, he's kind of a turd. That's okay. That's okay. You need to be like that, because nobody's giving you a win because you're a nice guy.
From what you've seen, do you think that maybe they can turn this thing around? You know, I know that's kind of a vague, maybe broad question, but do you think this is something that, again, they can get corrected?
I mean, you know, I've been on teams that started out 1-5, 1-6, and we go and win a lot of games, you know. So things can be corrected, but in order for things to be corrected, for one, you got to have the people that can correct them, and then you got to know what's the problem to correct the problem. So if you don't have the guys, then you just don't have the guys. And then if you don't know what the problem is, then the same things are going to continue to happen over and over and over. So, I mean, if you can be honest and say, okay, this is what the problem is, and we got the guys to fix the problem, or we got the mental to fix the problem, we got the concept, the scheme, whatever it is to fix the problem, then yeah, I think you can turn it around. I mean, there's only 3 games. They still got, you know, what they got to win 5 out of the last 8. What they play? 10 games, 11 games?
12 games, they got to win
12 games? So they got to win 5 out of 9?
5 out of 9.
I think that's possible. It's tough, but it's possible.
You know, it is. But I think for me, as Ryan said, I've seen Lobo football since 1970. You know, I saw Rudy Feldman, Bill Montz, Joe Morrison, Jolie Dunn, Franchione, Mike Shepard, saw a lot of them. And this program, we must be honest with ourselves and each other. doesn't have a winning pedigree. It doesn't. It struggled the last couple of years. We mentioned Bob Davies bowl teams, and nobody even talks about some of those teams he had, and they were darn good. He had some darn good teams here. But I just don't see a winning – the people that made guarantees like that, we talked about it. Pat Riley, Joe Namath had winning pedigrees. They had championship teams before. Namath had won the AFL championship and made that guarantee in the third Super Bowl, and people lost their minds, and he won it. It was a bold statement to me, very bold. And like I said, I'm a fan of Coach Gonzalez, a big fan. I just don't know where that came from, because now as a player, you played in the pros and here. How much pressure does that put on the players? Because after every game, if you lose, they're come and run it. Coach made a guarantee. Where are we? Why did you lose? It just, I think, becomes a big issue within the locker room. And you mentioned the chemistry with your Lobos mentally, that you probably could have handled something like that. Rocky probably wouldn't have done that, didn't need to. How much pressure are on the players inside the locker room with this guarantee?
I mean, I think as players, you don't really care about that stuff. Like, you don't think about that until the media asks you about it. Like, they're not sitting in their dorm rooms right now like, hey, man, Coach guaranteed we was going to make a bowl game. We got to go make a bowl game. Like, they're not doing that. So I don't think it puts pressure on the players. They're either going to perform it or not, whether he guaranteed a bowl game or he said that he don't know how the rest of the season is going to go. I think the players are going to play how they can play. And if you're a young team, or you got young players, or you got transfers, or whatever it is you got to build it. They got to perform. They got to stay healthy. And, you know, as coaches, you got to put them in situations to be successful. And if you don't have those things, then you can guarantee all you want. It ain't going to change the results on the field. If the guys aren't buying in, or if the guys aren't working, and I'm not saying that they're not, but just because a coach says, I guarantee we're going to make the playoffs, make a bowl game, I don't think that puts any pressure on the players. They won't think about that unless somebody bring it up, a media guy, or, you know, if Coach G brings it up in the meeting, then they'll think about it. But I don't think they think about that stuff. They probably didn't even hear about it, honestly. They didn't watch the press conference. So unless it was in the newspaper, they don't even know he said it. I mean, these are 18, 19-year-old kids.
They're not, especially in this day and age in 2023, they're not reading the newspaper.
Right.
I know that from experience.
Right.
No. Looking ahead, though, UMass is a very winnable game. UMass, just like the Lobos, had a ton of incoming transfers. I don't remember the exact number, but I know it was 20 plus, maybe 24, 25 incoming transfers that transferred down from Power Fives. So they're kind of dealing with that same complexity, kind of understanding like what the character of their team is. But like New Mexico State, they actually beat New Mexico State in their season opener on ESPN. A very mobile quarterback, Tyson Pumachan or something like that. I think he transferred out of Clemson and then transferred out of Georgia Tech.
He's not playing.
So, he's not playing.
No,
okay, so that changes things. Yeah, okay. Well, I was going to say it's just going to pose another kind of mobile quarterback threat which the Lobos haven't shown that they can stop yet. So outside of that, I know they have a really good running back. So it kind of went back to what Glover was saying about stopping the running game, and everything kind of starts there.
Yeah, you got to stop the run game. If you can't stop the run game, it's going to be very difficult. But like you said, they had 24 transfers, guys transferring down. That's what you're going to have. That's what's changed the landscape of college football. These guys now don't feel like they have to sit at a Clemson and be the third guy on the depth chart when they can go to UMass and play and get paid. If UMass got money, which, you know, Massachusetts, they got money out there. If a school really wants to turn their program around, if they raise enough money in NIL deals, some kind of way you can pay for some good players in today's game. As sad as it is. You can find guys on rosters that are good players that are not getting to play because they go to Texas A&M, because they go to TCU, because they go to Utah. You can find those guys that are good players that are not getting to play, especially O-line guys, D-line guys, right? Big guys. Some of these schools, they probably got 12, 14 O-linemen on the roster. But they're not getting to play because they're at the big school. They can come to New Mexico, make 40 grand, and start for 3 years. They'll do that. So that's why you're seeing some of these schools getting these transfers. I mean, it evens up the playing field some, but now, you know, schools like New Mexico, some of the, like, you got to be able to find ways to get and keep your players, because I don't know. And I mean, I got a buddy that played at UMass, so I know he's gonna be talking smack. So heck, we lost to the Aggies. Like, we definitely can't afford to lose to those guys at UMass. I might not hear the end of it.
I don't know if anybody else has anything, but we really appreciate your time.
One more question, Ryan.
Go ahead, Ed.
One more question. You know, I got to ask you this. You played in the pros as a safety. You're darn good. Led the NFL in interceptions in 2014. What's the hardest collision you had during your career?
Ooh. Whoa. The hardest hit?
Like
that
over the middle. Yeah, over
that
the
I
middle
hit somebody or somebody hit me?
You hit somebody.
The hardest hit that I hit somebody? Ooh. That's tough. Whew. You know, I honestly don't know, man.
Probably a bunch of them, huh? Yeah.
You know, I mean, I had some good collisions. Don't get me wrong, but I really wasn't trying to hit like that. I'm trying to make the tackle. Like, I wanted interceptions, man. Like, I'm gonna make the tackle. Like I said, I had times where I had some collisions. You know, you got to have some. I remember hitting Tavon Austin in the end zone one time. It was a bang bang play. You know, I got a fine for it. You know, it was a pretty good hit. I done faced some running backs up. Like, to me, those are good hits. You know what I'm saying? Running back in open field and you can square them up and take them head on. Like, those are good hits. But I mean, I caught Pierre Thomas on the sideline one time. He was a running back for the Saints, and they threw him like a wheel route out the backfield, and I just caught him right on the sideline and freaking broke his ribs. And, you know, I caught David Johnson, a running back that was in Arizona. They threw him a seam pass, and I caught him right in the ribs too. He was out, broke his wrist. So yeah, I mean, I done had some good collisions, but I don't think people will remember me as like a hitter. I want the ball in my hand, so I mean, interceptions, stuff like that. That's what they'll probably say. They remember more from me, other than like big hits. I made tackles, but
all right, I lied. What I mean, you were the playoffs with the Texans and the Lions, but what would you say stuck out in your pro career that you'll never forget?
Man, I had a lot of things, you know, just I mean, playing pro ball is so surreal for one, you know what I'm saying? Like, you grow up watching this stuff on TV, and now you're out there, and every stadium that you walk into is just like this amazing big stadium. And then everywhere you look across from you is like stars, you know, just like, wow, that's Peyton Manning. Oh, that's Tom Brady. Like, that's Aaron Rodgers. That's Drew Brees. That's Mario Williams. That's Brian Cushing. That's Andre Johnson. That's Calvin Johnson. That's like every game, every time you look around is just like, wow. so just being out there every game was like amazing. You know what I'm saying? And so my first game playing in Houston, playing against Mark Sanchez and the Jets, and they had I think my second year we played in my second year, they had LaDainian Tomlinson. I was a huge LaDainian Tomlinson fan growing up, and he's the running back for the Jets, and I got to go out there and tackle this guy. Like those are just great memories. But then when you get to the point to where you're making big plays to affect games, interceptions, sacks, just things that's like, and now you're making your name, and then you go and you're able to get a second contract. Like that's a huge accomplishment. You know what I'm saying? I started 148 consecutive games. Like, I mean, that's something that's kind of unheard of at the safety position. I missed one game my whole career. I played 159 out of a total of 160. Like that's, accomplishments like that are just like things that's like, wow. When I look at my interception wall, it's like, a lot of times when I meet young kids and they ask me like, who did you intercept when you played? And I just tell them like, 9 times out of 10, if you name your favorite quarterback, and I guess I won't say young kids, I would have to say middle-aged teenagers, I guess, because if you say young kids, they're probably gonna say, oh, did you get Patrick Mahomes? Well, I never played against Patrick Mahomes. Did you get Josh Allen? I never played against these guys. These are younger guys, but your middle-aged guys, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Joe Flacco, Phillip Rivers, like Ben Roethlisberger's, that era of quarterbacks. I mean, I probably got all of them. Matt Ryan, all of them. So to me, that's just like so cool. I'm a huge fan of the game, but that's, to me, that's like super cool to come from where I'm from, go the route that I went, make it to the top of the top, and then make it to the top of the top. Like that was pretty cool to me.
Well, I admire your. I'm a big history buff of the game. I tried to combine a history degree and a journalism degree, and now I'm in tech sales. So go figure, 'tis life. But bad joke. But anyway, I love the wall behind you. I think it's awesome, and you do have a Lobo helmet there. So that, I don't know, it's awesome. We were gonna just give our opinion, the three of us, and then you responded to our message. It was just gonna be three older guys bitching and moaning about the UNM losing to NMSU. But for somebody who played in those games and had a stature of your career, we, the three of us here, be it Eric, myself, Jesus, I almost referred to myself in third person, never do that. But myself, Eric, and Ed, we really appreciate you, man. Thank you very much.
Oh, no problem, man. Thank you guys.
Thanks so much, man. Thank you very much.
Glover.
No doubt, man. Keep doing your thing.
We
Thank
appreciate